Hello, William and Mary. Thank you for joining us for our third community conversation. During this time of pandemic, we are gathering online weekly to hear what members of our community are experiencing as the weeks unfold, to answer the most pressing questions that are coming our way during that week, and to share how William and Mary is responding to COVID-19. I want to begin this forum as I have the last two. I'll talk a little bit about our goals. I will answer those most frequently asked questions. I will give you a short update about the COVID-19 picture in Williamsburg and Virginia so that the folks who are joining from around the country and around the world have a sense of what it's like right here. And then I'll introduce our guests and we'll get talking. So to remind ourselves of the four goals that are guiding William and Mary's response as we move forward, the first and foremost is to safeguard the health of our community. The second is to keep teaching and keep learning because our core mission is to educate human beings. That's what we do. The third goal is to maintain our research and our university operations. And I want to say one more thing about that for a moment. A critical aim here is to keep all of our employees working. And as we're seeing, that's requiring all staff and all faculty to work in new modes, regardless of the kind of work that we do. The big picture here is that Virginia higher ed is one of the sectors of our economy that can help keep our economy going through this crisis if we embrace this adaptation with persistence and goodwill, which we're doing. It's my view that William and Mary has an obligation to our region, to our Commonwealth, and to the nation to help sustain the economy going forward. The fourth goal is that William and Mary has embraced the national imperative to slow the spread of COVID-19 locally here and in the region. It's important, I think, to keep returning to these goals and to share them widely. They will be our touch points during a period of continuous change as we require new kinds of decision making. And because of the resourcefulness and the shared purpose in this community, we are still teaching, we are still learning, and we are still working. It's taken extraordinary effort and real sacrifice in this process. And I'm so proud of the way that our community has pulled together over the last month. Here's the current situation in Williamsburg and in Virginia. COVID cases here and around the Commonwealth continue to accelerate as we move towards peak. I want to acknowledge those in our extended community here and perhaps dialing in listening who have COVID, who are caring for those with COVID, who are on the front lines of that care. At this moment of intense uncertainty, one thing is happening is that many of us are coming to know friends and loved ones or ourselves fall sick. And we are thinking about you. You are in our hearts at every moment. So the models for Virginia are shifting. Just a few days ago, the forecasted peak moved back a little bit to late April. Governor Northam has set June 10th as our target for his stay-at-home order, but there are some positive signs that are giving me cautious optimism, maybe a little bit more optimism than a week ago, that the actions that we are taking here are helping. Here are the two most frequent questions this week. They're about commencement and about the summer. So for commencement, as our timeline is unfurling, it became clear that we would need to defer commencement and the beloved traditions that surround it. We're working to identify a date when we can safely gather to celebrate. That's the critical question. And we will strive to ensure that all students and families who wish to join can. For now, we're going to be conferring degrees on May 16th virtually, because those matter as our graduates move into the next phase of their lives. And we're working with student leadership so that our plans for the 16th and our plans for an eventual commencement stay closely connected to the perspectives of our seniors in particular. We're also adjusting our summer plans. Provost DeGuris shared yesterday that we will move to remote learning, research, and internship experiences wherever possible for both terms. We're unrolling some new offerings in sought after areas that I'm very excited about, including a Jumpstart data science program. So we have more time to plan right now than we did for this first conversion to online. And I am confident in the creativity of our faculty and staff to create strong summer programs. Overall, William & Mary has been shifting in the last week from flat out crisis management to operating in pandemic conditions and discovering what that means. This is truly uncharted territory. We keep saying that, and it's still true. I would remind everybody that William & Mary has successfully weathered disasters before in recent memory, hurricanes, for example, recessions, before that wars, other epidemics. Our focus now is on decisions about how we adapt. In the short term, how we adapt, and in the longer term, in a way that sustains what we value most about this institution and about our community. So the big question that all of us are grappling with is how to make decisions about the best ways to adapt when our uncertainty is so high and very little seems to be in our own control. So that's the question that is our focus for today. What happens to how both individuals and communities think when uncertainty is high and control is low? To talk about that in the context of William & Mary, I've invited three guests. Peter Atwater, an alumnus from the class of 1983, yay, class of 1980s, an adjunct professor of economics here and a founder of Financial Insyghts. He's also a prolific blogger on the questions about certainty and vulnerability. That's incredibly interesting right now. Second guest is Marjorie Thomas, William & Mary's Dean of Students, who has been at the front line of every response that we have made to safeguard the health of our students and ensure that they can keep learning in the best possible way. And the third guest is Eva Wong, Director of International Students, Scholars, and Programs at William & Mary, who has, like Dean Thomas, been one of the most important people on the front lines of William & Mary's adaptations this past month. So welcome, everybody. So I'm going to ask Marjorie, Eva, and Peter, you all wear multiple hats. So could you briefly say a little bit about the different roles that you bring to this conversation?
So I will go ahead and begin. I think, especially in this time, it's probably left an impression upon me, not only the roles, but the caregiving component of that, in terms of helping navigate, in terms of being a mother, a member of a family, a member of this community, and making determinations about how I can serve and be a contributor. As it relates to William & Mary specifically, giving so much more credence to this idea of being part of a tribe and a family and what that means. And I think truly kicking into caregiver mode and making sure that as a partner and as a colleague that the offices and the units that I work with are getting what they need, and also for our commitment to our students and how we support our faculty, that we're providing everything that folks have needed in this period of transition and uncertainty. And I have to say, until a period like this, you don't really dissect who you are in that way. But I think it's allowed me, and I know many folks, to really look at the different roles that we're playing and how we come to the table at this time.
So I'm a parent. I have a second semester senior who is home with us, who's trying to figure out how to finish college. I'm also a faculty member, and so I've been experiencing this in terms of moving my class online, but also in trying to help my students to navigate this. We didn't prepare for this. This wasn't like we came to online learning as we would arrive as freshmen on campus. For some of us, we moved. For some of us, we ran. And so there's a sense of trying to settle at the same time students are trying to learn amid, in many cases, many changed roles. They're cooking, they're helping with childcare, they're taking on a whole series of new responsibilities at the same time that we're asking them to be students. And so I think part of my role right now is helping them to navigate this environment where They're trying to adapt and to learn as we go. I've described it as we're all learning to ride a bicycle in a hurricane.
As with everybody else, we all wear multiple hats, but I think those hats are getting very heavy. Those hats are getting all mixed up as we're all, working and learning and living, in our own separate worlds. Those areas where we could easily separate all becomes blurred together. So it makes it very challenging, right? When we have to work, but also do childcare, perhaps maybe care for our loved ones. I think we're all asked to assume new roles, right? I think now as a supervisor, I have to be the cheerleader, right, for all my staff members. I have to be provide assurance to all of the students and the communities that we are serving. So I think we're all trying to figure it out, and we're all finding that those roles are definitely blurring into one and another, and just trying to figure out how we can still be to give the best, to be the best versions of ourselves, while trying to navigate the many uncertainties and challenges that we are facing and that we will continue to face in the upcoming weeks and months.
Am I unmuted now? Yes. Peter, you wrote to me about 3 weeks ago to alert me to how hard it was going to be to make the big shifts that were coming. And this feels like a really long time ago. It was early in my emotional response to the kinds of decisions we were facing. And I remember you said, you're going to have to pause the strategic planning process because at times of great uncertainty, human beings need to be able to focus on the here and now, not on a 10 or 20-year horizon. And my reaction was, oh no, but we're on a huge roll. And of course you were right. It was incredibly helpful. And by the way, for those listening, we are going to make some measured changes in our timeline on strategic planning, but that's for another time later this week. What was really helpful to me, Peter, was recognizing how hard and really massive the conceptual and emotional shifts are going to be. Big shifts, not incremental ones. And you've talked a lot about how people think under pressure, under crisis, when we're vulnerable, as we really are. We don't just feel vulnerable, we are vulnerable right now. Could you say a little bit about how we can frame those big shifts for ourselves?
Sure. We don't think about confidence as being cognitive, but it really is a reflection of how we're thinking. And when our confidence falls, particularly as it has in the last 6 weeks, we necessarily, out of necessity, have to choose what's important. And those things in crisis that are important are me, right now and right here. And everything else we involuntarily exclude. It either doesn't matter or it's something that I'll be afraid of at some later date. And so we inherently and reactively just move to this intense me here now moment. And I think many of us can sense that in terms of the days that feel like weeks or years that we've just been through. And that's very consistent with those moments of panic. And I think we've just experienced a major panic, a major traumatic event. And one of the consequences of trauma is that we don't recover from it. We adapt to it. Mm-hmm. And that's a very different mindset. It's not like we've been shocked. The ships have been burned. And so we're all now having to expend what's already thin cognitive bandwidth to try and figure out, while being exhausted, while doing 2 things at once or 5 things at once, and feeling vulnerable physically, vulnerable financially, vulnerable in many ways at once. And so what I think we're seeing is this desperation for available bandwidth. And so trying to make decisions that are thoughtful at a time when, that me here now thinking is so overwhelming.
When we talked, all of us, yesterday about this conversation, we had a discovery, which was all of us independently felt that this was a hard week. And it was, we're only at midweek. Maybe even Marjorie, you could talk about where that sense that this is a hard week has come from for you. And then Peter as well. I will just say, I think we know it's a hard week nationally, thinking of all who are tuning in from around the country and around the world right now. In the United States and in Virginia, we're moving towards peak. All of us know more people who are grappling directly with COVID-19. So the staff and the families and students and faculty have a more immediate sense of the risk to health that our country faces and that our healthcare workers face. Next week may be harder, but I'm interested in where your sense of what's been hard this week relative to last week has come from, Eva, and then Marjorie.
I think as I reflect on the past few weeks and just hearing, what Peter has said, comparing this situation to experiencing trauma, right? It made me think a lot about, going through the stages of grief. We think about, when we are grieving, for a loved one, a loss of a loved one, or a loss of something that we cherish. Initially there's the disbelief, right? I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening in Williamsburg. And then there's anger, right? Like, why is this happening to me? Why is this decision being made? It's unfair. I don't deserve this. Nobody deserves this. And I think it has been a particularly hard week because I think for me and maybe for many others, we are going to the stage of, a deep sadness, right? And a deep sense of loss. We are all grieving for the way life used to be. We are grieving for love, the loss of loved ones, of health, of jobs, of security, of lost opportunities. I'm feeling very sad for my daughter. She can't be at school right now and she cannot have play dates um, with her friends. So I am grieving for a lot of things that I have lost, and then also then seeing a lot of the loss and suffering that's happening around us. So I think it's a sad place to be in for all of us now. But I think if I was to go back to the comparison of, you know, relating this as to a grief process, that eventually I think that we will all rise right from this experience, and hopefully we'll all learn to adapt. We will accept and then figure out new ways for living or being. Hopefully, find space to begin to create new traditions and new memories, and being creative to solve problems, right? I'm really seeing a lot with my daughter. I mean, she's just being so creative about just the games and things that she's creating. So I'm seeing that even as a family, we are creating our own little traditions, right? As we kind of hunker down in our houses. So I think that, yes, it has been hard because I think we are all very sad and grieving, but hopefully that we will adapt and then rise up and find ways to live.
Marjorie, you talked about your discovery in your work with students of lived experiences that hadn't been visible to you before.
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's some insight that through this experience that myself and many of the people that I work with every day, this idea that I've always known that our place matters, this place, William and Mary, and the value that so many of us, our alums, our supporters, obviously the more immediate community members in terms of our students, faculty, and staff. But I think more so what's been hard and what I've gained insight into the difficulties that folks are navigating is this place also provided a sense of a level playing field for some of our students, of this transition that they've had to go through, and not knowing, would we be ready as an institution, would services and resources still be available, what it was going to be like for the overwhelming majority of them, for example, who had never engaged in um, remote instruction before, and how would that work? And also hearing from students some of the experiences that they're navigating being away from essentially their second home. I mean, we talk a lot about that, especially upon students entering the university. It's one of the sessions I oversee in my area during orientation, welcoming students home, and we cheer them on in Kaplan Arena talking about that. And I've heard much in terms of narratives that talk about not having access to particular resources like connectivity, or being in a home that has been such a source in the past of support and encouragement, where there are multiple people in a residence or multiple generations in a residence. And so they're navigating space and navigating priorities and navigating well-being. Students also making determinations about, you know, what the future holds, both in terms of short term and long term, and not being sure about what internship opportunities are going to look like, what employment is going to look like, and what does that mean in terms of their quality of life next, and all of that, quite frankly, has kind of convened in one space, essentially in terms of this week, right? Because students have been engaging with us more, engaging with their faculty more. So one of the things that I must say, even in terms of that difficulty, that I've been so inspired by, is how the community and alumni and even fellow students have stepped up to say, we are here, that we are here for you, that while this place matters, it's we as the people who give value to the experience of what William and Mary is. And, you know, reminding students through our communications and through our engagement, while this may be difficult and may be a point of transition, that we are here with you to help you get to the other side of that. And so that resources are up, whether it's student accessibility services or our care support units or our Reeve Center, our Writing Center resources, that we have done everything possible to ensure that those services are up front and center and accessible to you. And I think while students are navigating so much information right now and trying to figure out how they are going to engage in the rest of this time, in terms of their curriculum and even their social engagement, it is a reminder that we're going to use this opportunity to be creative. We're going to use technology in ways that we haven't before. Um, but I am definitely inspired by the reminder that we are all in this together. When I think about the contributions that have been made by community members, the fact that even students, as we've navigated rebates for students in the past couple of weeks, that we've had over 50 students contribute their rebates to help their peers and to ensure that students have what they may need to transition during this very difficult time. The fact that we've been able to assist over 170 students in terms of support and resources, whether it's helping them with lodging or working with our partners in Reeves or information technology and putting out, loaning out computers and laptops and MiFis. I mean, it's just been an extraordinary effort, but it's just reminded me about this community and how not only that this place matters, but who and what we bring to this community matters as well, and it will get us to the other side.
Peter, one of the things, I'm listening to Eva and Marjorie here, one of the things that has been so great in talking with you is that part of your message has been to say, this is normal, right? As you listen to reflections on staff experiences, student experiences, community experiences, what's striking you in the this is normal mode?
Yeah, so
and is there anything that's surprising, I should ask too? Yeah.
Yeah, so far there really hasn't been anything surprising. The panic phase as the virus approached us was to be expected. And I think that, again, very much like a post-traumatic environment, we're now grappling with how do we begin the process of adapting while feeling vulnerable and also feeling tired. And I think particularly for our students, there's also an identity crisis that's happening. William and Mary is a place that students come to excel, to be excellent learners. And, William and Mary on a clear day is really hard. And amidst this, I think many of my students, and I'm sure for others, are struggling with what does it mean to be a great student amid this? And what does excellence look like? Because my students will say, I'm just not feeling like the student that I was. And I think part of this is to be kind to ourselves and to recognize that when our confidence is low, our mean voice comes out. I look at anxiety in the middle of the night, and in the middle of the night, when we're Googling anxiety, we're also Googling, am I fat? Am I stupid? Am I all of these things that I'm not? And so I think there's a lot of doubt that people are having, and being able to help students to recognize that this is an environment where success is getting through it, where we need to redetermine, recalibrate what excellence looks like, and to realize that none of us, not faculty, not staff, not students, is functioning in the same way we were just a couple of months ago.
So cutting slack might be cutting each other slack, cutting ourselves slack might be one of the really important things that we can do, particularly this weekend next as we head into some really tough times. Deliberately doing that, as I listen to the wisdom here, what in the three of your estimations are the actions that help? What are the things that people listening and viewing right now can do that help as we head into a really tough period?
So one of the things, Catherine, that I would recommend for all students is to move to PassFail. And having had many conversations with students in the last couple of weeks, there is a sense of defeatism, of not being good enough. What will graduate schools think? What will that? It's like, no, nobody's going to look at you for the second semester of this school year and expect heroics. So I would encourage I've been encouraging all of my students, and I would say more broadly, this is an environment where passing is a heroic achievement. And so to recalibrate success in those terms and to give yourself some slack in that. Don't wait until May. That to me is, too much hardship for too little return.
Because you're taking your classes, you're cooking dinner, you're
worrying about parents
doing childcare for your next door neighbor who's a healthcare worker. All of the things that are, in fact, our faculty and staff and students are taking on, our alumni around the world are taking on right now. It's that ability to embrace what we're called on to and allow ourselves to do that the best way we can. That I think we should be empowering each other to choose right now this spring. And I agree, spring of 2020 is going to be a time we do all remember and that we recognize as fundamentally different in what it is to be successful. Part of what it is to be successful is to lean into our community and help support each other in our vulnerabilities. Eva or Marjorie, what are your thoughts on what helps?
I think that as we all feel very isolated, staying in our homes, I think it's helpful to also remember that in many ways we are still very much connected. I miss my family members, friends, colleagues, but at the same time, the situation has also given me many, many opportunities to connect with students, scholars, faculty, staff in ways that I wouldn't have. Um, I'm having a lot of conversations with students, just spending time talking and answering questions, providing reassurance. I'm involved with many new admits programs, more so than I've done in the past, because I think now more so than ever, we do need to remind, our communities that we are here. We want them to be at William and Mary. You belong at William and Mary. So even though we're feeling very isolated, not to forget that we are connected in many ways, that we still belong, and to try to find those connections, right? One way or another, that perhaps maybe in this time of crisis, that they could possibly be opportunities for new kind of connections, right? Connecting with people that maybe you wouldn't have, because if this wasn't happening, maybe we wouldn't be talking, right? So I think for me, I think it's helpful to remember that, yes, although we are apart, we are still very much connected to one another.
Margie, a last quick word before we wrap. What helps from your view?
What has helped me kind of not focus as much on me is making sure that I reach out to others. I think sharing stories during this time can be very comforting. I think it allows for vulnerability. I think it allows us to learn from each other. I know I've worked with so many of my colleagues for many years now, going on 8 years almost, and to have kind of more in-depth, intimate conversations about how we are in this time, at this time, in this space, navigating family and responsibilities, doing so in spaces where we're not engaging in the ways that we have in the past. I think it's given me a chance to learn more about the students that I work with, the colleagues that I work with, even family members. That I think this window of time, this pandemic has also created a space for us to be more intentional and be more intimate in our time with people. And I would say that that's something that has helped me be centered and not be as focused. When I think about how I've managed this, it's been really focused on doing the work and helping others and making sure things are getting done. And that is where I've been able to find some space to be not as focused on what I need to do, but how I can also receive, how I can be vulnerable, and how I can create spaces where, in particular, the people that I work with every day have an ability to be vulnerable and show me of themselves, so that we're having a sense of what we're all going through together, and that it also gives me insight that should anything come up, right, that we're not learning all of that at once, that we've developed these relationships and communication sequences that are letting people say, you know what, I can raise my hand. I need some help now. I need to adjust. I need to look at this particular issue differently. And I'm hoping that during this time, we're all going to do that more for each other.
I'm so grateful for this reflective conversation. Each one of our conversations has been really different. And one of the things that I'm taking away from this one is the power of that space for reflection. Reflection on the struggle to adapt, invitation to others to hear their stories and their experiences, and to be vulnerable in turn and sharing one's own. And I would add reflection on the fact that the work that we're doing, hard as this is, even being home is at work, right? Just to stay home takes work right now. That work is mattering. We are starting to see in revised models of peak, we are starting to see an impact of this national work that we're involved with. And so I would invite everyone who is part of the alma mater of the nation and who thinks of ourselves, knows ourselves as an institution that is committed to long-term relationships, to learning for all time coming, and to flourishing over the long haul, that it's these points of reflection that allow us to keep embracing more than me here now, even in moments of intense uncertainty. So I'm so grateful to be doing that with you. And to everyone who's listening, please keep sending your questions coming our way. Those questions are guiding how we craft these conversations, and they're incredibly helpful to understand where our community is at from week to week. And I would also say keep your photos of and encouragement coming too, and we'll keep sharing them. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to close in the way that I started to close all these conversations, which is to say, stay well.